And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our first presenter, Mr. Ken Shaw, founder and CEO of Infrascale. Let me give Ken control so he can share his screen. There you go.
Terrific. All right, cool. We did it. Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us. Thanks for your attention today. We're excited to be here at the EcoCast. We've been working with Actual Tech Media for a while, and they're great guys, so today should be a good event. I'm going to be talking about DRaaS and what we call the failover revolution. There's a lot of changes underway in this industry, in this space. And so here's sort of the agenda of my presentation. First thing we're going to talk about are key DR trends, what we're seeing in the industry. After that, we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts of disaster recovery. And then after that, we'll talk specifically about what's the Infrascale different. What is it that really makes Infrascale stand apart? All right, so let's dive into the meat of this. Our mission at Infrascale is to eradicate downtime. The computing industry has been very quick to develop, ways for us to create more content and, really rely on systems. But the industry has been really slow to develop ways to protect that data and keep those systems up. We think about the DR industry right now as very similar to what the CRM industry looked like back in the year 2000. If you think about CRM back then, it was enterprise software that really only the largest of companies could afford. It was a six-figure purchase. It took 6 months to implement. And at the end of the day, most people were really unhappy with their CRM implementation. Salesforce came along and said that, hey, there's this thing called the cloud, although back then we weren't calling it the cloud. And we can use this to make CRM simple, on-demand, scalable, and almost instantaneously available, deploy in 24 hours. And it's that exact narrative that we're bringing to disaster recovery and DR as a service. Many companies are frustrated with the solutions they've got today. They've cost a lot of money. They take a lot of time to implement. And as we saw earlier, still about half of the companies surveyed by Actual Tech Media aren't sufficiently protected. And so we want to solve that by making it cloud-based and easy to use. So when we sort of think about the three key problems facing the industry, I've sort of canvassed these in my opening remarks, but all of us now rely on data and systems for our survival. We have a customer who came to us. They're a $200 million company in an old school industry, sort of distributing, goods. And they had an outage where they were down for a day, and it cost them $600,000 to be down for a day, right? And it was because all of their data and systems flowed through a few AIX boxes that they couldn't fail over properly, right? So we've never been more reliant upon our systems. And yet, only the biggest companies can afford to put true failover in place. So part of the research we did with Actual Tech Media last year yielded a very interesting insight that 68% of the companies surveyed were using backup and recovery technology as a key part of their DR toolchain. And the truth is that backup and recovery technology makes for very poor disaster recovery. It's slow. It's not always reliable. It's a variable time operation. I'm going to dig into why, all of that is bad a little further on. But essentially, we look at the market where lots of people are using backup as poor man's disaster recovery. And then three, the companies that do have failover in place generally only have it for a few of their systems, their most mission critical systems. So they've got to pick and choose and sort of, play favorites with their infrastructure on what infrastructure they're actually going to put failover in place for. Now, the problem with picking and choosing is that you're generally going to be lucky or wrong, right? So it's not a good position to be in. Our solution is to use the cloud, and so Infrascale offers a cloud-backed DR as a service solution, or DRaaS. We focus on mid-sized organizations, and we guarantee that we can bring back your entire network in 15 minutes or less at 90% less than what IBM would charge you to do that, right? So we're using the cloud to deliver breakthrough performance and disruptive pricing so that really every business can enjoy true failover for all of their systems. I'll dig more into that a little bit further on. Just pinging off some of the comments that were made in the introduction, whilst it's true that we spend a lot of our time in disaster recovery thinking about the floods and the fires and what I call sort of the biblical disasters, In reality, a lot of the failures that we experience are what I call micro failures, right? So the numbers on screen came again from that study that we did with Actual Tech Media. 55% of major outages were caused by hardware failure, 22% by human error, 18% by software failure. There's only 5% that fall into that macro disaster or biblical sort of disaster category, right? And yet the prevalence of outages is still enormous. So in that same study, we found that 91% of participants had a data center outage in the last 24 months, and 47% of them had a data center outage that year. We did this survey in late 2015. So, the state of preparedness in the industry is still really, really poor. And so why is that? Well, part of it is because of the way the technology for disaster recovery has evolved, right? It's historically always been based on the reserved infrastructure pattern. And I'm going to talk more about the reserved infrastructure pattern further on. But it's meant that you've had this continuum where if you think about your recovery time on the one hand, and if you think then about your cost, there's always been this linear relationship that, for example, offsite tape backup, that's expensive, that's not very expensive, but the time to recover is very slow. And then, cloud backup is, still quite affordable, but can still have a very long time to get back up and running. Using on-premise disk, more expensive, but faster. Then you actually go to having a cold site DR solution where it's, you're going to be able to handle a macro failure, but it's still going to be quite a long time to bring your solution up. We go to warm site DR where you might have, a recovery time objective of a few hours, but boy, is it getting expensive. And then you go to fully hot site mirrored DR, which is the most expensive type of solution and can really break the bank. Ideally, what we'd have is something up in the top left of this graph, where you could have a recovery time measured in seconds or minutes, but you would have a cost profile similar to offsite tape backup. And so this is the vision that InfraScale was born with and that we've been working towards, and really giving you super fast failover, so minutes, but doing it at the price point of a traditional enterprise backup system. And so another interesting thing is sort of dig into the mindset of folks. So, when we dig deeper and look at why people haven't implemented failover, why they haven't implemented true DR, these are the reasons that really jump out, right? About a third of people just immediately assume that it's too expensive. Quarter of folks say that, look, I just don't have the in-house IT resources to make this happen. About a quarter of folks are concerned about compatibility and complexity. So what I'm going to sort of talk about here is how these preconceptions don't have to apply anymore. There are DR solutions, particularly DRaaS solutions like ours, that solve the expensive problem, that are push button simple to use, so you don't need in-house IT, and work on all your major infrastructure, so you don't need to worry about compatibility and complexity. And so we boiled this down into sort of 5 rules, the do's and don'ts of DRaaS, or the do's and don'ts of disaster recovery. And you can think of these as kind of guidelines that you would use as you're assessing DRaaS vendors, right? And so my first point, and this is one I feel really strongly about, is make sure you avoid reserved infrastructure, right? So DR has been based around this thing, the reserved infrastructure pattern, for 30, 40 years. And so, imagine on the left here, imagine the red circle is a $50,000 Oracle box. The way that most DRaaS vendors, even today, will protect that is they will put another box of similar capability in a second location, and then they'll wire those two things together with bandwidth, people, and software. And so what started as a $50,000 solution is now a $150,000 solution when you look at the TCO to establish that sort of resiliency. Well, with the cloud these days, you just don't need to do this, right? So when I say that InfraScale is a cloud-backed, on-demand DRaaS offering, what I'm talking about is that we don't have this second box that's going to sit there and is super expensive. What we do is we map your systems, we map your network, we capture all the data, we shrink it down, we deduplicate it, encrypt it, and then we send it up to the cloud where it's sitting dormant and is costing you very, very little, until such a time as you hit the red button and declare a disaster, at which time, in real time, we reconstruct your network, we rehydrate those servers, we inject them into hypervisors, and we boot and run them. We can do this for hundreds of VMs in less than 15 minutes, and we guarantee that, right? And it's only with the computational power of the cloud and with advances in virtualization and software-defined networking that we can do this. But big one is when you're talking to a DRaaS vendor, really look at the total cost of ownership and look at the ratio of, if my production costs X, what is this fully redundant failover solution going to cost me? And it should just be like a 10 or 20% premium over that production box. The days of doubling your costs are behind us, and that's really terrific, for the industry. And then the second major guideline I'll throw out there, which is related to this, is avoid hardware-heavy solutions. So I call it the sort of the hardware hamster wheel, right? But we've all been through the scenario where we buy a storage array, we start pumping data to it, we fill it up, so then we have to go out and buy another storage array, rack and stack it, start sending data to it, we fill it up, and round we go. And this is, this is a life cycle that NetApp and EMC and IBM have loved, but it's a really inefficient way of doing things. And again, with the advent of modern cloud technologies, we don't need to do this anymore. So when I say avoid hardware-heavy solutions, look for software-centric DRaaS solutions, which give you the ability to spill over into the cloud, or in other words, keep a small amount of data on-premise and put the majority of the data payload out in the cloud where it can be done really inexpensively. And some folks don't realize this, but cloud storage is now substantially less expensive than on-prem disk, right? So whereas once upon a time, putting all the data out in the cloud would be crazy from a pricing standpoint, that's no longer the case. You're now actually going to save a lot of money by doing this. So your old archive data, maybe you've got to keep data for 7 years if you're regulated. You can leverage inexpensive cloud storage to do that. We have this technology we call cloud spillover. And it's really this idea that if I've got, say, a 4 terabyte on-premise magic backup box, I should be able to send that box 4 terabytes or 40 terabytes or 400 terabytes. And it should just be able to figure it out. And so our cloud spillover technology allows our appliances to then spill the data over to the cloud transparently to you and to your users, and then bring it back when you need it, right? And so look for technologies that do this. We're not the only ones who are doing this sort of intelligent workload balancing in a hybrid cloud configuration, keeping some data on-premise for speed, and then a lot of data out in the cloud, moving it back and forth dynamically. The third one is sort of a compound point. I've entitled this like design it end to end. And what I really wanted to call it was, avoid the corner case gotchas. One of the problems with DR solutions is there are so many footnotes to their, to what they can do. So like the first one, for example, backup any device. It's not just about servers. It's not just about virtual servers, right? So we think it's really important to get a solution that will allow you to protect physical servers, virtual servers, laptops, desktops, right? Because if you can cover those 4 things, you're then going to cover all of the data and the systems that your organization relies upon, right? And so many DR solutions will say just focus on, like a Veeam, Veeam just laser locks in on supporting VMware, and that's really, really important. But you should then also make sure you can get a solution that also supports your physical servers and supports your laptop fleets. And related to that, another big gotcha in DR is operating system support. So again, picking on Veeam, they just support VMware, but most folks have hybrid infrastructure that is across VMware, Hyper-V. We saw in the survey earlier that folks are using multiple hypervisors, but then also goes out to Linux. There's heaps of us running workloads, with Linux on Metal or Windows on Metal, right? Also Unix and AIX and some of the, the more a little bit older but very entrenched enterprise, kind of offerings like Solaris, right? So look for a vendor who can support all of these things. Here at Infrascale, what we've focused on doing is supporting VMware and Hyper-V for the hypervisors, Windows on Metal and Linux on Metal for physical servers, AIX, Solaris, HPUX in Unix land, and then of course we support Windows and Mac OS X for laptops. And so we're not the only vendor with that kind of a footprint, but seeking a vendor that's really going to help you cover all of those locations means you're not going to have gaps in your DR regime. Third one is deployment flexibility, right? So there are a lot of vendors out there who will force an appliance on you, right? We don't believe in that. So with us, you can deploy us as a physical appliance, a virtual appliance, or just straight software. And I think that's important. Look, it may be racking and stacking appliances may be totally fine in your environment, but I think understanding the deployment requirements of your DR vendor is pretty key. This next one, cloud flexibility. One of the big hidden gotchas in the cloud industry is that vendors will lock you into their own cloud, right? And that's just a new form of vendor lock-in, which we want to avoid. So look for technologies that are going to run on major public cloud infrastructure. Here at Infrascale, you can use the Infrascale cloud offering, but you can also run our technology on top of Amazon, on top of Azure, and of course, you can run it in a private cloud configuration on top of OpenStack or on top of VMware and Hyper-V-based private cloud environments. So cloud flexibility, super important. Recover anything. I think this will be a common thread with what we're all talking about today, but in traditional backup-based DR regimes, what you're really recovering is data, whether it be a file or a folder or a disk. But what you want to be able to recover is a running system, right? So you want to be able to press a button and get back a running system, not a file. Or even better, bring back an entire data center worth of running systems that are, inter-networked, right? And so that's really sort of the holy grail of DR is don't give me back files, don't give me back data, give me back my running network, please. Oh, but I still want to be able to drill down and recover an individual file. So with us, you can recover the full system, you can recover your entire data center, you can drill down and recover a disk or a folder, even a file, and as an administrator, you can do that from your iPad, which is pretty cool. Boot anywhere. We talked earlier about the difference between micro and macro failures. One of the reasons why we recommend putting one of our small appliances on-prem is it's a hyperconverged box, which will actually allow you to run, a lot of servers right there on it. So for micro failures, if the motherboard on an ESX host dies, you don't want to fail over to the cloud or off to a second site. You just want to boot on-prem. So you can boot and run all of those VMs right there in the Infrascale red box, which is pretty cool. And then last thing is don't forget failback, right? A lot of people, when they're designing their DR solution, they just think about the disaster scenario. They don't think about how they're going to get their systems back into their network. And arguably, that's just as important, right? So to really make sure you think through what the failback looks like and look for vendors who make this easy for you. Point number 4, prioritize recovery and test. It's not really about the failover. It's really about bring up your applications. It's that recovery piece, right? And in the old world, think about what happens. At 2 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday, and these things always happen on a Saturday, you get, and at 2 a.m., you get word that there's been there's a flood in the data center, and so all the servers are out. So what you normally do is you sort of jump out of bed, put your boots on, get in your car, drive either to that data center or to the secondary data center, and you start restoring things. That's an old school approach. Imagine instead that you roll over, grab your iPad from the nightstand, log into a web portal, find the office that's affected, and then press a couple of buttons, and then the entire network comes back up. That's what the Infrascale experience is. We're going to see a demo of it in a couple of minutes. But really, with a 4-step wizard, you can bring back your entire network from your bed without ever getting up, and do this for 200 VMs in under 15 minutes, right? We guarantee that 15 minutes. It normally takes a minute or two, right? So generally the RTO that our customers are targeting is a minute or two. This then also makes testing your DR rig so much easier. In the olden days, we only did a full failover test once a year because it was such a pain in the butt to do. And then afterwards, we'd do a diagnosis and analyze all the things that went wrong, and then we'd spend the next 12 months mitigating those problems. Well, in this new on-demand cloud-backed vision of DR, because doing a failover is as easy as clicking a button, and because it's so inexpensive, you should be testing regularly. You should test every week, right? And so looking for vendors who can deliver push-button simplicity, full automation and orchestration, can bring back your entire network, at the push of a button. That's really the standard you should be seeking, right? This is no longer something that only the biggest companies can afford. This is now something that everybody can afford. The last one is prioritize security and encryption. In the olden days, data protection vendors would say that security and encryption was another vendor's problem. And I think this is crazy. I liken that to a bank who says, look, give us your gold, we'll store your gold. Oh, but locking it up, that's someone else's problem, right? And this is what backup vendors have been saying for 20 years. But backup and archive systems have become major targets for bad actors. If you think about some of the very high-profile breaches, like, for example, the Sony breach that happened 18 months ago, they targeted the backup and archive system because that's an aggregation point for a company's data. So you've got to look for vendors who are making security a first-class feature of their platforms. And at InfraScale, we've got our UltraSafe technology, which is a form of double-blind encryption, where basically before data leaves your premise, it's encrypted with with a key that only you have. Then it goes over an encrypted tunnel to us, and we encrypt it again with a key that only we have. So that data is sitting there in two encryption wrappers, and you and I have got to cooperate to unwrap that data. If somebody breaks into my system, the data's garbage because they don't have your key, and if they break into your system, the data's garbage because they don't have my key. So with security, there's no silver bullet, but looking for the use of double-blind encryption is going to geometrically reduce your risk. We've also then gone and built some other security features into our system, things like some MDM functionality that allows you to do find my laptop and wipe my laptop. So, find my iPhone and wipe my iPhone, that comes with my cell phone, but it doesn't come with my Lenovo Windows laptop, right? So we went ahead and built that into our solution because sometimes protecting data means destroying data. So that brings me to the end of sort of my buying guide. Just to recap on those 5 rules for DRaaS. Avoid the reserved infrastructure pattern, avoid hardware-heavy solutions, make sure you design your solution end-to-end and think about those edge cases. 4, look for somebody who's going to deliver push-button simplicity for you to just eliminate all of the risk and the complexity that has historically plagued DR solutions. And then number 5, take security seriously and look for a vendor that takes security seriously. So with that preamble, I'm going to plow ahead here and tell you a little bit more about InfraScale, and then we'll do a quick demo. I covered it at the top of my presentation, but I just want to reiterate. Our mission is to eradicate downtime. It's a big, bold mission, but we want to do for DR what Salesforce did for CRM. We're making it on-demand, we're making it simple, we're making it cloud-based, and we're making it affordable. And the vision that I'm relaying to you today is really becoming popular, right? We're protecting more than 1 million devices around the world and 40,000 businesses. This map shows you all of the businesses that are being protected with our technology over the last 12 months, right? And so tens of thousands of businesses around the world. Because of sort of the platform we've built and what we're delivering to our customers, where we can deliver 15-minute guaranteed failover at 90% less than the incumbent vendors. Gartner named us the cool vendor for disaster recovery last year, which we were super pumped about. CRN named us one of the top 20 cloud companies to watch. It's also important to note that we work through partners. We have 1,000 partners around the world. And so if you're a partner on the line today, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to talk to you about our partner programs. If you're an end user on the line today, what's terrific about our partner network is that we've got feet on the street in every major metro on Earth. If you're in Poughkeepsie, one of our partners can be there this afternoon. If you're in Edinburgh, in Scotland, one of our partners could be there this afternoon. So now I'm just going to play this video. Hopefully this will work through the system. What you can see let me set this up better. Let's simulate what we do at 2 a.m. on Saturday night when the data center floods, okay? So what you're going to see me do in this video here is I'm going to pick up my iPad, I'm going to log into the InfraScale dashboard, and I'm going to bring back a network. So let me go ahead here and press play. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff, that our dashboard can do, a lot of metrics, a lot of analysis, a lot of tools. It's a very powerful tool. It comes with all the centralized monitoring and management you would need. It'll integrate with your RMM or your PSA if you're a partner. But let's go in and let's look at the failing over an office. Each of these rows here you can think about as a location, right? So generally we'll recommend putting one of the InfraScale appliances in one per location. They're thin 1U and 2U servers, a lot of flash, very highly performant, designed to be able to run up to 50 VMs right there on them. So it's like a hyper-converged box itself. But what I'm going to do here is, we're simulating this disaster. Network's down. So I'm going to go ahead and click into the cloud replica for the office in question. And what I'm going to do is, you can see all of the recovery points and all the various servers that I'm protecting. I'm going to go over here to Cloud Boot. And that's the magic technology for us, is our Cloud Boot capability. And we'll see here we've got about 20 servers across Debian and Windows and the SQL Server box there. I could boot all of these, right? I could run a boot group. I can also do an automated script so that these will come up in a various sequence, but I'm just going to do a manual start on one of these servers. So I picked the latest recovery point on one of these boxes. I've then got a lot of different networking options that I can implement everything from point-to-point VPN to RDP and SSH. We also support Direct Connect. We also support even MPLS connections into our grid. I'll set up my notification here. Normally, booting a server like this will take 60 to 90 seconds. We do everything in parallel, so if you were doing 200, it's going to do all 200 in parallel. We're not running it's not sequentializing these. And so what you can see there is that's already spun up the server in the cloud. So I'm now going to connect to that and just RDP into it to make sure everything's working fine. So what I've done so far from my bed, again, I've brought up a server, I've now RDP'd into it, so I can do whatever I want with it. But in this case, it's an Exchange server, so I want to make sure it's got outbound internet access, so then all of my users can continue to get their email. So I'm going to go ahead here and ping Google. All right, we can ping Google, we're alive, so we've got public network access. So what you just saw me do was fail over a server, literally from a browser. And I did this, this took about 90 seconds, and I could do this for 200 machines in parallel, right, in just a few minutes. Infrascale guarantees that the entire operation will happen within 15 minutes. So this is just a wrap-up slide. So, what are we doing? We're using the cloud to eradicate downtime. We're delivering on-demand, cloud-backed DR as a service with a 15-minute failover guarantee at 90% less than the price of the major vendors. We're doing this because we really believe that every organization has the right to protect their valuable data and keep their systems up and running simply, flexibly, and affordably. And so that is my whole presentation, boys and girls. But we're going to do some Q&A now. I hope we're still okay for time. Few things on screen. You've got my Twitter handle, also my direct email address if you're interested in getting in touch with me, and my LinkedIn. In terms of next steps, really recommend getting a free eval unit. We'll send you out our cloud failover system for free, so you can use it in your, in your environment. You could also use our virtual appliance solutions. You don't need any hardware. Come and join one of our webinars. We'll send a pizza pie out to your office, and you can do a lunch and learn. Or you can jump on, just in general on Twitter, the hashtag DRAS is a great place to tweet. We have a hashtag for today's EcoCast. It's hashtag DRAS EcoCast. And you can also email us at team@infrascale.com. So lots of ways to get in touch, lots of ways to get your hands on the technology and really see this for yourself, which is the best way to, to learn about new technologies like this. So with that, let me pass it back over to the actual Tech Media guys now for Q&A.
Excellent presentation. Thanks so much, Ken. Yeah, we do have quite a few questions here from the audience for you. So we've got a few minutes for Q&A. So let's see. The first one here is about the initial, replication of the data. How, I'm sure that varies with how much data you have, but I mean, is there some way to control that? And how long does that typically take?
Yeah. So firstly, if you've got a lot of data, what we'll generally recommend is we'll send out to you a physical appliance that all the data will go onto, be compressed, and then you FedEx that back to us, right? So we've done that for, we can do that for petabytes of data. So if it's a lot of data, that's the recommended approach. You can't beat the bandwidth of a truck, interestingly. But for small amounts of data, you do it over the wire. When I say small amounts of data, terabytes is fine. We do a lot of deduplication and compression, and we're doing a lot of over-the-wire dedupe as well. So we can really shrink that data payload down. Typically in virtualized environments, we're going to get a 90% reduction in data payload. So if you've got 100 terabytes of VMs, we're going to shrink that down to 8, 9, or 10 TBs to actually send over the wire.
Okay, great. And there's a question that just came in here about the evaluation unit. What's roughly how long do they have to test it out?
Oh, there's no hard and fast limit on it. Most of our, most people who will use our eval unit will play with it for a few weeks and then generally move to production, right? So it's generally pretty quick. I'm sure there are some T's and C's deep inside our company that says you can't have it for more than X months, but it's really a simple and easy solution to deploy and use, and we'll work with you to make sure you've got as much time as you need to bang on it.
Okay, great. What about the RTO and RPO? They're asking what kind of RPO and RTO can you support?
Yeah, so what we recommend for most organizations is a 15-minute RTO and RPO, but you can dial that down as low as your network will support. So if you've got a fast enough link, you could dial that down to like a 2-minute, RPO. Your RTO, like I said, it's normally going to be like 60 to 90 seconds before you're back up and running, and so we guarantee 15 minutes, but 90% of the time it's like 60 seconds or 90 seconds to be back up. So that's all highly configurable. And the main variable there is, if you've got a solid internet connection.
Okay. And they're asking here, just to clarify, with InfraScale, the data is stored in the InfraScale cloud. Is that correct? They don't need a secondary data center.
They absolutely do not need a secondary data center. That's one of the big things we're trying to make, obsolete. It doesn't have to be the InfraScale cloud. It could be Amazon. It could be Azure. It could be it can be Google. So we support all of the major public clouds. We also then have our own network of data centers that customers can leverage if they want to.
Okay. So they're asking here about control over the data center. Do the customers have any control over where the data is kept?
Absolutely. Yeah, complete choice. So we've got some customers who want it outside of America. We've got some customers who want it only inside of America. Like, it's all very configurable and transparent. And users are totally in control of that. We have some customers who are like, look, I just want your software and I'm going to go and set this up myself. Thank you very much. And you can do that too.
Right. Cool. Another question here is about the cost or the pricing. How is it? What's the pricing structure?
Yeah, so it's not priced per socket or per VM. It's very inexpensive pricing. It's based on data volume. So right now, we've got a promotion going where I think it's $180 per terabyte per month for an unlimited number of hosts, unlimited number of endpoints, unlimited number of VMs. And so it's very aggressively priced. And again, we're really trying to shake things up and disrupt this industry, which hasn't had a whole lot of disruption.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned the virtual appliance edition. So that's an option?
Yes, it is. Yeah, so we've got lots of customers who already have serious hypervisors in place and would rather run our software, within that framework. So we supply both a VMware virtual appliance or a Hyper-V virtual appliance that allows you to sort of run all of this functionality from within your existing hypervisor setup.
Okay, very nice. And then what about the throttling of the data? Like, if they're sending this data over a production internet circuit, do you have bandwidth throttling controls?
Yeah, there's a lot of traffic shaping functionality built into the tool, so you can control all of that. You can set different go at different speeds at different times. We've also built WAN acceleration functionality into the solution, so you don't need to buy like a Riverbed or a Silver Peak or something like that. We've actually gone and built WAN acceleration into the tool, so it's one more box you can eliminate from your rack.
Nice. A question just came in here about agents. Do they install agents on the host, or how does that work?
For hypervisors, it's happening at the hypervisor level, so it's agentless, right? For physical servers, there are agents, and for laptops and desktops, there are agents as well.
Okay. And what about like specific applications? Like, they're asking here about SQL databases with time-sensitive data. Is there any sort of application awareness or?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because when you do so. Agentless versus agent-based backup is kind of a religious thing, right, in the industry. The best approach is a mix of both. So when we're, for example, dealing with like a VMware environment, we're going to work at the VMware level and we're going to hook into those APIs. You won't need to install an agent inside every VM. But we are application aware. We are still going to detect if you're running SQL Server inside one of those VMs. And we're going to deal with SQL Server differently to the way we deal with Exchange or Oracle, right? So we are application aware. And we can still transparently to you, appropriately quiesce and deal with those different application stacks, within those VMs, even though we're still working at the hypervisor level.
Okay, and they're asking here specifically on that. So are they crash consistent backups or?
Absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
Vital. So transactionally consistent, sorry, they are not crash consistent backups. They are transactionally consistent, properly quiesced snapshots, right?
Got it.
So a lot of, some vendors who will work agentless are going to be doing crash consistent backups, and that's bad juju. That is just not a safe way to protecting your enterprise workloads.
Right, right. Another question came in here. What about access to the cloud? Like, can you create a VPN tunnel to your cloud that you bring up, or is that option available?
Yep, bunch of different networking options. So, you can use TLS over public internet. You can use point-to-point VPN. You can use MPLS if you want to actually put a direct connect in or already have MPLS circuits among your environments. If you're using the Amazon cloud, you can use Amazon Direct Connect. So a lot of different options when it comes to networking, and highly flexible.
Excellent, excellent. Well, got a few more questions coming in here. We'll try to get back to those after the event, but excellent presentation, Ken. So for more information and to get their eval unit, they email team@infrascale.com. Is that right?
That's right.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much today for your presentation, Ken.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.